heard the phrase that only Christmas trees get decorated? I heard this. I think I was in a veterans organization, like a VFW or American Legion years ago, and in the corner they had this little Christmas tree decorated, and the idea was that only Christmas trees get decorated. And when you enter a veterans hall, for example, uh, veterans typically treat each other as equals. They don't care about rank. You leave your rank at the door. They don't care about your medals and ribbons and all that stuff. Because you kind of lit up like a Christmas tree. That this is the idea that only Christmas trees get decorated. You see some of this type of employee recognition programs, especially at non-union trucking companies, and they're giving recognition. They're giving drivers recognition for years of service or accident free, a million miles, things like this. And they give you a certificate, and they take your picture, they put it on social media, and they promote their company. And they're like, here at ABC Company, we recognize our drivers for exceptional service, safety, years of service, longevity, all this stuff, right? But here's the thing, you know, the certificate, if you're going to be pragmatic about it, the certificate is kind of worthless because it's not paying for any of your bills. It's decorative. It's a little pat on the head that says "good job." you and if you're self-employed, you don't need that. Employees like that. That keeps them motivated and have good attitude, things like that. But if you're self-employed, why you need affirmation from someone else? I think like you can get a certificate from the American Truck Association for going 1 million miles without an accident. Well, let me tell you, you go 1 million miles without an accident. Many of those times that you could have been in an accident was sheer luck you didn't get in an accident. So these awards, they don't really amount to a whole lot, in my opinion. It's like you don't need that. You don't need that pat on the head. Um, the other thing is they don't pay you anything. Like they'll give you they'll give you recognition for driver of the month or driver of the year. But it's like, where's the money? Because that's what's going to pay the bills. And if you're going to use my image, you're going to take my picture and you're going to put it on your website and you're going to put it on your social media. I want to be compensated. Just like the college football players, they're compensated for name, image, and likeness. But the drivers are not. So here you're giving away, your name, image, and likeness for free. In exchange for a certificate of appreciation, which is meaningless. uh, it's a feel-good program that companies do to make their employees feel good. One thing about being an owner operator, independent contractor, even the companies will give awards to their owner operators, and you really got to wonder. It's like, why do they do that? Because in some ways they're treating you like an employee. That's like, oh, if you're going to recognize this driver like you would recognize an employee, you're really kind of crossing that line that says, these drivers are not employees. These are independent contractors. This is why many times you'll see people say that owner operators who are 1099 independent contractors are misclassified employees because the company's treating them like employees. They're giving them employee recognition awards, certificates, achievements, recognition. So I always stay away from that stuff. It's like, I really don't need the company to recognize me. To me I don't need that recognition. I if they want to give me money, I'll take that. But it seems like, it doesn't come with money. It just comes with um, a paper certificate that you can't use to buy anything with. It's like, you know, it's useless. I mean, um, it's like being decorated like a Christmas tree, but people aren't Christmas trees, or you got to treat them like human beings. It's I suppose for an employee, it's motivational and inspiring to be recognized by your company. But as an independent contractor, owner operator, not so much. And part of this recognition program too is that you got to behave like an employee. You got to be in quote unquote good standing. You got to be an outstanding independent contractor, like you would an outstanding employee, which means you got to, you know, do everything that they ask you to do and not complain. So that kind of flies contrary to the business model of being your own boss. Because they say, hey, I really want you to haul this load, and it doesn't pay crap, and you're like, no, I don't want to haul it, and they're like, well, we need a favor, and you turn them down. Well, guess what? You're not going to be recognized for the owner operator of the month. you know, you want that recognition, you better, better take that load, even though it makes no business sense to do it. But this is kind of somewhat manipulation. It's like guys actually, want to get recognized. They want to get these certificates. They want to get decorated. They want to get awards. Me, I'm not into it. I'm just not. It's like, yeah, what's the value of that? Okay, if you're gonna give me something, is there a cash value equivalent? Can I take the cash instead? There never seems to be a cash equivalent. And why am I giving them permission to post my name, image, and likeness on their website and on their social media? That promotes their business, doesn't promote my business. I'm not getting compensated in any way, shape, or form. So these programs are somewhat self-serving. They're there to promote the corporation. They're not there to give award you with money. They're not saying, well, you did such a great job, here's a raise. No, they don't do that. They give you a paper certificate, and then they take your picture, and then they post it all over social media, and you don't get paid for any of it. So they do have the courtesy of asking you if you want to participate. I always opt out. It's like, no, 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 I don't need that. I don't want that. So it's something that you think about, and you're like, okay, well, the company wants to give me a certificate, and then they want to take my picture, and then they want to post it on their website. And you're not being paid. You're not being paid for that. So Christmas trees get decorated. Unless I'm getting paid, I really don't want it. I don't want the recognition. I don't need the pat on the head. I need the cash. All right, guys. That's all I got for you. So watching. We'll see you on the internet.